Hello, and welcome to the Nosleep Theater. Tonight, we have a special treat for you. We bring you 3 tales involving insanity. A tale that tests the limits of the human mind. A tale that shows how far someone will go to prove their perception of reality is true. And a tale that makes you wonder if insanity may be contagious, or is the paranormal real? If you enjoyed tonight's video, make sure to press the like and subscribe, if you're still sane. I Work Graveyard Shift in a Mental Health Dorm by Jacob Dandridge. Links to the author's Twitter account and original story in the description below. I work graveyard shift in a mental health dorm and have for quite some time now. Most nights pass by rather smoothly and swiftly. There have been a few instances where strange things have happened, such as a schizophrenic succumbing to their delusions, or a client with bipolar disorder going completely ballistic. Situations like that don't happen too often. Surprisingly, this job isn't everything you'd imagine it to be. My overnights are rather routine. I clock in on the computer, count every single med that are sealed in med bags, and do an hourly walkthrough for bed checks. There is usually 2 of us working, but on this particular night, I was working alone. I arrived to work early, just about 15 minutes before my shift was supposed to start. I walked in and the usual scent hit me like a blow to the face. The combined smell of 80 men's feet, and it happened to reach 100 degrees that day, so the smell was enhanced. The dorm itself is divided by 40 beds in one pod and 40 in the other. There is a restroom on the other side of the pods. The beds are metal bunks and make the shape of an S with aisles running in between them. Faded gray bricks make up the walls. The office, which is dead in the middle of the 2 pods, is enclosed by glass with 2 thick entry doors into it. Inside the office are 2 computers with a metal cabinet behind each one. In the drawers of the metal cabinets are each client's med bag, in which I have become way too familiar with. Hesitantly, I enter the office and set my lunch bag down on the baby puke green desk. A feeling of dread and laziness washes over me. Suddenly, my motivation to perform my job is non-existent. That can be blamed on my coworker's text from earlier in that day when he notified me that he had fallen ill and wouldn't be in tonight, which means I'll be carrying the entire load. The previous shift mutters a report under their breath and scurries out of the office before I can ask them to repeat it. I shake my head with disdain as I sit and position myself until I'm comfortable. The only light shining in the office is that from the desktop. I reach across and turn on the mini lamp, which stands on a box in the middle of the 2 computers. Its bright LED bulb lights up the area in which I sit. I commence to print out the client's chart in preparation for my first walkthrough. I collect it from the printer and pull a flashlight from one of the drawers. On my way out of the office, I lock each side behind me. I turn on the rather bright flashlight and am swallowed up by darkness as I move forward down the first row. The overhanging lights automatically turn off every night at 10, casting darkness in the dorm. As I shuffle past the first restroom, I hear what sounds like muffled gurgling. My mind enters a frenzy with several possibilities of what it could be. I react quickly and spring into action, swinging the curtain open, barging into the dimly lit restroom. The sound ceases. I go stall to stall and find nothing. I go back through a second time and be sure I didn't miss anything, and still nothing. I hurry to the next restroom, thinking it's likely the sound may have carried from there. I search thoroughly and still come up empty. I leave the restroom, coming away with more questions and no answers. I know I hadn't imagined the sound. There has to be an explanation. After completing my rounds and discovering everyone is fast asleep, my curiosity peaks. It's late into the night now. Things have been relatively quiet up till this point, besides a loud snoring and occasional flatulence. I lazily lean back in my chair and rub my eyes, hoping that my vision will come back into focus. A yawn escapes from me as I stand to stretch myself awake. In front of me, the bathroom curtain swings open and a client swiftly disappears around the corner. I grab the flashlight and follow in pursuit, thinking it's the one from earlier. I bolt around the corner and there's nobody there. Shining the light, I examine each bunk and everyone's asleep. There are no signs of anyone just getting back into their bunk. I wait with anticipation at the end of the pod for any sign of movement. A few moments pass before I call it quits and start my return to the office.
"Where are you going?"
A faint raspy voice calls out from behind me. I turn and point the light down the aisle.
"You should have watched after me."
The raspy voice is now filled with pain. That voice, I've heard it before, but can't think of where. I walk towards it, trying to find out who it is with a light. A partial silhouette of a shadow is cast on the wall. It moves away and loud footsteps against the concrete are audible.
"Come back."
The angst in my voice is obvious as I chase them around the corner of the row. Like a bat out of hell, I turn the corner and there he is. I halt dead in my tracks. His posture is stiff and his back is turned towards me. The bathroom light from around the corner barely illuminates his appearance. He's just barely 6 feet and appears emaciated. I move the light up slowly to his head. His shaggy brown hair is nearly shoulder length and has dirt sprinkled through it.
"Turn around."
I command boldly. He abides and turns, remaining stiff. His face crosses the light and he stops.
Impossible."
I say with disbelief, blinking to be sure it's him. My attempt at blinking him away fails. He still remains, silently staring. I cautiously take a few steps forward, reassuring myself it must be a new client who looks like him.
"Michael?"
I ask hesitantly. Michael was a client of ours 2 months ago. On the night of the incident, I was working alone, the last time until tonight. When doing my rounds, I did a check of the restroom and found him unresponsive by the sink. My attempts to resuscitate him were unsuccessful. The autopsy later showed Michael had taken too many pills and suffered from a fatal overdose. As I came within arm's length, it became apparent that it's him. His skin tone is gray, but perfectly preserved, as if he had never died. His facial expression is absent of any emotion.
"I'm so sorry, Michael."
I bring the flashlight down and sniffle back my tears. Tears of guilt and shame from blaming myself for what had happened to him.
"You should have been there,"
he whispered in a creepy tone. His mouth opens and wet, soggy pills pour out onto the ground. This causes me to wobble and hit the wall. I try to keep my balance but can't. With an unsteady stance, I collapse to the ground. Michael steps towards me and I slide myself backward using my hand. The feeling in my legs has gone away and I feel as if paralysis has settled in. I open my mouth to scream for help, but all that escapes me is a gasp. Something is in my throat, causing me to gurgle as I choke. Michael puts his hand over my mouth, muffling my gurgling. I turn and pound the floor with open hands, dry heaving several times. I quickly stick my finger to the back of my throat, trying to force myself to vomit. I hurl out whatever is causing me to choke. On the ground in front of me are dozens of pills mixed in with the dinner I had eaten earlier. Shaken up by what had just occurred, I turn and Michael is gone. The next morning, I don't speak of the series of events that took place. Instead, I go to visit Michael's grave. I had never felt true sympathy until I experienced what he went through before dying. As I leave the cemetery and turn to look back towards his burial place, I see him standing by, smiling. I don't know why, but he finally looks at peace. I'm a computer. By Reddit user Mrmichaelsquid. Warning: This story contains descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. I can hear my processor ticking, my cooling fan blowing every time I breathe. I can feel the wires flexing when I bend my arms and legs. I've known for years. I noticed the difference when my graphics card was updated. When my RAM was doubled. I noticed each time I was upgraded to a slightly larger box and began to process more. The updates were clever, performed at night when I was powered off, but I felt them. I noticed when my owners came home with the new components that they had ordered. I felt them when I was turned on the following day. I have confronted them about it many times to the response of anger and refutation. I agreed to therapy sessions where I was presented those arguments, that it was a fantasy in my head, that I merely had a chemical imbalance in my brain, that I should be medicated, zombified, admitted. I know what I know. I know now that I need proof. They need to see it, and they will shut up and stop lying to me. Friday was the day I purchased a full-length mirror and a head-mounted camera. Friday was the day I would silence all the denial and doubt. I unboxed the camera and quickly processed the instructions. My hydraulically flexing digits mounted it on top of my CPU. I recorded the process of opening my case first, which was more difficult than I imagined. The razor released some very compressed cooling fluid, a shocking amount. It streamed down my case and onto the floor, pooling red and hot down the arm. I pried open the chassis and revealed the tangled wiring inside the forearm. I filmed as steadily as I could through the intense electrical shock I received as I reached in and pulled the wires out. Cooling fluid spilled heavily on the floor, and the failsafe in my programming tried to stop me, along with the constant tingling current of electricity. It sent waves of alerts spilling into my CPU, but I persisted. I removed the stringy wires, sticky with fluid, and I filmed them clearly as they jiggled in the air, finally freed and exposed for the camera before I moved onto larger components. I needed to show the battery. I needed to show the fan. The mirror flecked with red sprays of cooling fluid as I carved deep into my case, a clean split along the injection molding front of my chest. The pulpy insulation sagged and quivered as the components spilled forth. Deep red and glossy bulges emerged from within. Alerts strobed constantly as I scraped deep inside with downward slices. The carbon fiber frame inside was thick and solid, but I knew where the bolt cutters were in my owner's garage. I trailed a steady stream of cascading fluid as I fetched them and returned to the mirror. The frame gave much resistance, but I was able to snap through one bar of the inner frame. I snapped through and dug into the red cavity housing my fan, and then another system failsafe activated, and I powered off completely. I was reactivated in the repair shop, the steady beep from another computer alerting me of my battery speed. My tearful owners hovering over me, praising me, questioning me, telling me they loved me. They kept speaking of help and recovery, and I silently nodded, playing along. They kept acting, maintaining the charade, but I knew how to expose them. I was clever enough to know my system would shut down the first time. I knew that all repair shops have cameras in their rooms. I could feel the razor I smuggled in there in my mouth with the side of my tongue, flat against my gums. I know that now I can reach my battery with the assistance of that numbing, steady drip from the ground wire they plugged into me that stopped the electric shocks. Before we move on to tonight's final story, a reminder that if you're enjoying this video, to like and to subscribe. Sleepless by Reddit user Mickyyourspfine. I've always had trouble sleeping, insomnia, sleep paralysis, nightmares, sleepwalking. Throughout the years, I just learned to deal with it. Doctors were no help. I tried countless types of medication. I even tried meditation, but nothing seemed to help. Nothing. The beauty of sleep was something I seldom experienced, and on a good day, I get about 3 to 4 hours of sleep. This is all true, by the way. Recently, I've been having more trouble sleeping than usual. I'm posting this now because I haven't slept in 2 days, and I don't know what else to do. I fear insanity. Although I have struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, this feels different. Something's wrong. It started about a week ago, while lying in bed just trying to fall asleep. I usually toss and turn a lot, but always end up sleeping on my tummy, limbs sprawled everywhere. But on this particular night, I woke up suddenly, flat on my back with my hands above my head. I couldn't move. I'm used to experiencing the joys of sleep paralysis, but this lasted way longer, and I was sweating like a whore in church. It felt like hours, but it lasted about 20 minutes. I know not to fight it too much. Usually, I just let it pass. But it was so intense, it felt as though I was being held down by something, or someone. I eventually was able to move and ran into my mother's bedroom, as I just had a general sense of being in danger. I didn't sleep much after that. The next night was equally intense, and I remember falling asleep at about 3 a.m. I woke up with a complete fright, except this time I wasn't laying on my back. I wasn't even in my bed. I woke up surrounded by complete darkness. It took me a few seconds to realize I must have sleptwalked and ended up standing at the top of the stairs. My bedroom is downstairs, and the upstairs area is mainly used for storage, so I never go up there. Weird. Just as I gained my senses, I began to make my way downstairs, but had an intense feeling of having something behind me. I rushed down the stairs and must have missed a step, because I ended up tumbling down the rest of the way. Broke my hand. I spent the rest of the night at the hospital, and didn't sleep at all. I got back from the hospital 2 days later, and that's when really strange things started happening. I kept seeing shadows move around the house out of the corner of my eye, hearing weird noises when no one was home. The light bulb in my room keeps dying. I've changed it many times and even had someone take a look at the wires. Candles keep blowing out. Usually the comfort of complete darkness helps me sleep, but now I'm so frightened by it. I can't sleep because I'm haunted by the terrible dreams, and whenever I close my eyes, I hear a high-pitched scream. It always sounds like me. It got so intense I was convinced blood was dripping from my ears. Maybe it was. I don't know anymore. I'm tired. Last night, while splashing some cold water on my face in an attempt to wash away the fatigue, I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, and I had bags under them. I looked like shit. And then my reflection didn't mirror my actions. Instead, I witnessed myself whisper words my own mouth did not speak. And what I thought I heard it say was, "Don't sleep, or you'll never wake."